As I imagine for a lot of VR enthusiasts, wireless PC VR is the dream. And that can be kind of expensive, especially if you're looking at like the Vive wireless adapter. That's another 300 bucks on top of like a $600 headset and base stations and everything. It's a lot of money. But with the Quest 2, which here in Australia is about $480, I set up my virtual desktop setup with just a second-hand router and a couple of Ethernet cables and a copy of virtual desktop, which all came to about $60 Australian. Okay, so here we've got my setup. We've got microphone and all that. Not really important. What is important is over here in this corner, our wireless router. This is a Netgear D6300, if I'm remembering correctly. Editor Josh will put it on the screen if I got it wrong. And that is being used as my wireless access point. Now I have a router downstairs that's connected to, here in Australia we have the National Broadband Network, which is a fiber network nationally, and all that stuff is downstairs. So we have Ethernet run through the house. This is going to be really difficult to see, but it's there. Yeah, there we go. So that goes up to this router. So yeah, as you saw, we've got Ethernet coming from downstairs up into my room, and then Ethernet going to the router, and then the router is acting as a network switch as well. So my computer and my Nintendo Switch are both hardwired in. Then the 5 GHz band is exclusive to my Quest 2. No other devices are connected to it. This guarantees that your Quest 2 is getting the whole bandwidth, it's not fighting with any other devices, it's just all VR. Only for video streaming, and no other problems should come up. You can have other devices attached to it, but you will see worse performance, you'll see stutters. I've noticed this pretty often whenever I have my phone connected to it, so I no longer have my phone connected to it, simple as that. So you'll have to get into your router settings for this part. Now, if you don't know how to access your router settings, it is usually an IP address of 192.168.something.something. If you Google your router's model, that'll generally give you the IP address that you can use to access your router. Once you are in your router's menu, there is usually a basic and advanced tab. You're gonna have to go into your advanced tab. If you're not comfortable with that, just watch the video. It's not super complicated, and you only have to change one or two things. So for me, with the D6300, it is under Advanced, Setup, Wireless Setup. Then we can ignore the 2 GHz band. Doesn't really matter, not important for us. What we are gonna use is the 5 GHz band, because you can have higher bandwidth with 5 GHz Wi-Fi. So even just from looking here, you can see this is up to 300 megabits and the highest here is up to 1300. So you want to be setting your bandwidth to the highest possible, as well as people have reported getting much better performance when choosing the highest channel possible. So have both of those set as high as you can, and you should be good to go. Once you've gone into your router and dabbled with all those settings, you should be good to go. Make sure that you are connecting to the 5 GHz band. I always put it as a different name, either a completely different name, or on the downstairs router I've got it as 2.4 for the 2.4 band and 5 for the 5 band. And making sure that you've got those right and you're not connecting to the wrong one will give you the best virtual desktop experience. And now, speaking of virtual desktop, we're going to jump into the headset and we're going to show you what settings to have a look at in there. Now that we're in virtual desktop, here on the left, you're going to have all your settings. Now you've got environments and all that, and what we're looking at is settings, which is your desktop settings. So if you're interacting with your normal Windows layout in VR, like this window here, that would be your just regular settings, and then streaming is for your virtual reality streaming, and that's what we're going to be focusing on. I've got a 1660 Ti, so I've got things set to low, because that's a pretty similar performance to a 1070, and slice encoding is on. That as the description says, reduces latency, but not every graphics card will be happy with it, so your mileage may vary. I've turned video buffering off. By adding a buffer, you reduce frame drops and stuttering, but you also add latency. To me, the lower latency is more important for the wireless VR experience, so I would rather have lower latency and the occasional stutter or frame drop rather than that buffer to visually smooth things out. Now, I usually play 120 FPS. I've been playing at 90 because I've been streaming, and in my experience, at about 60 megabits per second at 120 FPS, I've had no problems at 866 megabits per second. Now, if you go to your computer's panel, you'll see the Wi-Fi network that you're connected to, and it'll say a speed. In this case, 866 megabits per second. Now, the astute of you will note that that's not what we set in the router. In the router, it was 1300. Wi-Fi 5 is only capable of up to 866 megabits per second on a single band. So ignore that. 866 on a router like the D6300 is the highest that you're going to get, unless you buy a Wi-Fi 6 router, in which case you can probably overlook a lot of the stuff in this video and just download Virtual Desktop and it'll probably work out of the box. I normally play at 120 FPS, but while I'm streaming I drop it down to 90, so with the current bandwidth that I have, which is set to 60, I find that that's an appropriate balance between visual quality and performance. Very rarely when I'm playing Beat Saber or most games at 120 FPS do I ever struggle. When looking for a router to buy, you have two options. You can take the easy route, which will be more expensive, and you can just go and buy a Wi-Fi 6 router off the shelf at your local electronics store or on Amazon. This is very likely just going to work out of the box with Virtual Desktop with basically no problems. If money is not an object, that's probably just the best way to go. Also, if you're already interested in upgrading your router for future-proofing reasons, that's also a good idea. If you want to go down the budget route like I have a look on eBay and see what you can find. I'm seeing secondhand routers that fit the criteria between $40 and $60 here in Australia. I don't know what that is in freedom dollars, but I will put that on the screen now. Hopefully, you can find something near you that is a good price. Make sure when you're looking at routers not to just go based on what's on the eBay listing, but look up that model number and check the manufacturer's page. Now, for troubleshooting your wireless VR setup, because you almost definitely will run into problems unless you're very lucky, under the streaming tab in Virtual Desktop, right at the bottom, there is a little box that you can tick called Performance Overlay. Now, that shows you a bunch of statistics that will make it much easier to troubleshoot what part of your whole setup isn't working. So if your frame rate is low, there's a good chance that your computer can't keep up. You might need to change some visual settings or drop the resolution. If you're seeing network latency go up quite high, check that you're connected to the right band. Make sure you're on 5 gigahertz. Make sure that all the router settings that we went through before are all correct and the highest bandwidth that you can possibly get. And then go to the computer's panel in Virtual Desktop and see what speed that Virtual Desktop says that you're getting. If it doesn't say 866 or 750 or whatever the maximum for your router is, just restart Virtual Desktop and restart your router. In my experience, that fixes it 99% of the time. Now go off and enjoy your wireless PC VR setup. Hopefully this all works for you, and I will be happy to answer any comments that have questions. If you want more content about the Quest 2, go check out my Quest 2 review video, or check out the VR playlist that I've got right here for you. Subscribe for more VR and general gaming content, and I will see you next time.